So today we'll be going over the fuel system on my 1994 Eagle Summit Turbo. So the fuel pump I decided to install in the vehicle was a Walbro 255 fuel pump. This pump installed with no modification really. It fit right into the cradle, into the fuel pump cradle, and I didn't have to make any wiring modifications either. I've read on some other Summit forums, and I even think the Summit Facebook page, that sometimes people tend to, I don't know, mess with the wiring to do something, but I didn't have to mess with the wiring. But then again, Summits are very, they differ from year to year. So again, mine's a 94, but I have wiring that matches a 95. So again, they're not, it's not really clear cut in terms of, what you may or may not have, because I even know that the fuel setup on this, I have the fuel pump on the passenger side, and I believe on the driver side of the tank I have the sending unit, and they're two separate pieces. Where I've seen in other Summits, they have the pump and sending unit all as one piece. So again, it varies. Now, what I wanted to go over is this fuel pump. Installing this fuel pump was not the easiest thing. If you have a Summit that has a lot of rust on it, you may be in for a fun time. So I have a bunch of pictures from when I went ahead and installed this pump. I know there was a couple guys who commented about how rusty the vehicle was. This vehicle is pretty rusty. Not the rustiest that I've worked on, but it's up there. Here are some photos. I'm going to go ahead and try to talk through them as best as I can. Now we can go ahead and see in this first photo, when I peeled off the fuel pump cover, this is what I was greeted with. This thing was made completely of rust. You can just see that the only thing that's a visibly different color is the plastic connector to provide power for the fuel pump, and the return line for the fuel. So this sending unit is held in with 6 nuts, and I broke 4 out of 6 of those. Here's another picture just showing again how much rust was on there. A couple sheared studs. The way that you can see on the right hand side, the way I was able to get some of these studs flat with the limited space that I had, I actually had to take a hacksaw blade and cut it into pieces, and then slowly cut away at the studs to make them flat so that I could drill them out. I went ahead and drilled out 4 of the broken studs, and I went ahead and installed helicoils in all of them. This was not a quick procedure, and it was a lot of trying days. I'd have to say that I probably worked on it for an hour, a day or something, or an hour once a week, because of how annoyed I was with this happening. Don't worry about the rust in the gas tank. I went ahead and I cleaned that out as best as I could before I went ahead and installed the new fuel pump. I tried to go ahead and dissolve most of the rust on the original sending unit. So here's a picture of that. Here's a picture of the original sending unit installed with all of the rust, or most of the rust, dissolved. But sadly, there was a couple fuel leaks on this original housing. We can see here on the fuel feed line to the fuel rail, the sending unit was leaking actually where it was soldered, the steel line, where that line comes out of the sending unit, where it's soldered, it was leaking there. And this picture here shows a pinhole leak on the return line. So this thing was complete junk, sadly. So I went ahead and I found this fuel sending unit, I believe off of a Talon. You can see the part number in the picture here. It's an Airtex E7081H. And then you can also see that I went ahead and I took some tin snips and I cut a little bit into the body so that the fuel feed line wasn't pressed against the body. Now I had to do that because the feed line coming off of the sending unit I think was a little bit taller than the stock Summit one, but this wasn't too bad. Just when I thought I was in the clear, the feed line leaked on me as well. So I had to go ahead and buy another feed line off of eBay. This one came from California. So now that we've talked about the fuel pump and what I had to go through to get that thing in there, let's go underneath the hood. I'll start at the fuel filter underneath the hood. So really quickly, the feed line from the pump to the filter has not been upgraded on this car, and I'm using a stock fuel filter as well. And then from the stock fuel filter, I have an adapter that goes from whatever size fitting that's on the fuel filter to a 6AN fitting. And then from there, I used a 6AN to a barb. It's a push lock or twist tight fitting. So coming from the fuel filter, which is tucked in back there, comes into the fuel rail with this push lock fitting, and then goes into the stock fuel rail. And these are 450cc injectors from a 2G. They went ahead and fit in there perfectly. I also purchased a O-ring kit just to put some new O-rings in there. These injectors are a low impedance injector, so you'll have to use some resistors because the ECU is set up for high impedance injectors. So then from there we go to the fuel pressure regulator. I went ahead and made a little bracket to mount that against the firewall. I just have a couple pictures here for you guys. Just see a simple bracket bent up in my vise and fit it perfectly. And what I wanted to show this in my other video, but you can see that I positioned the fuel pressure regulator a little too high and the hood was hitting it, so I had to take my hole saw and drill a hole into the hood. Another thing that I went ahead and did, and I would also recommend, is I rebuilt the fuel pressure regulator. It's about 25 bucks to rebuild, and it definitely is worth the insurance. This is an actual Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator. This is not an eBay one, but if you're on a tight budget, you can always buy an eBay fuel pressure regulator and then purchase an Aeromotive rebuild kit so that you get the Aeromotive diaphragm. That will definitely work pretty well for those eBay fuel pressure regulators. Then for the return, it's tucked underneath here. There's very minor clearance, but it's there. And then go ahead and you can see the barb reducer that I went ahead and made. That is JB Weld, if you're wondering. JB Weld works really well for trying to seal up those tapered fittings. So that pretty much does it, going over the fuel system on this car. I really hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you found it helpful, and I don't know, maybe adopt something from how I have my setup, or at least give you an idea as to how to deal with something you're trying to face with right now. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all those YouTube things, and please check out my other videos. Until next time, thanks.